On today's show, after an ugly first half against the Brooklyn Nets, the Rockets wake up in the third quarter and take care of business. What changes did they make? How did they clean up their game in the third quarter to be able to pull away with this one? Alperen Sengun with yet another 30-piece performance. Fred VanVleet dropping in another 20 and 10 game. Thompson and Cam Whitmore continuing to carve out and earn rotation minutes, and yet another clunky game for Jalen Green. We're going to unpack it all right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
Throw it up to Jalen Green.
Sengun here in the short row. Oh my, that's the no-look.
Jabari for three and the win. Yeah!
Look at Tari, Eason. Cooking.
Here comes Tari. No!
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
The Houston Rockets select Ime Thompson and Cam Whitmore.
One thing I have never done is not made the playoffs, and so we want to take that step here as well.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, and the show, of course, at Locked On Rockets, free and available wherever you listen to your podcasts, including YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you for being an everydayer and making the show part of your day every single day. Houston Rockets get the 112-101 win against the Brooklyn Nets. And look, wins against the Brooklyn Nets are always sweeter because the Rockets still own all the Brooklyn Nets draft capital for the next handful of years. So there's some added incentive whenever you face Brooklyn to want to win these games. And Brooklyn is teetering on the precipice of looking like a team that might be behooved to blow things up and reacquire their draft picks. Now, that's probably a topic for another day, but it is a topic that we will revisit later on in this show, at least very, very briefly before we wrap this one up. I want you guys to know that I have not had a reason to open Tankathon all season long until this game, just to check on the status of the Brooklyn Nets draft pick, which is I gotta tell you, it's a phenomenal feeling after basically having Tankathon be my homepage all of last season and every season prior. All right, so the Rockets got this win, but it wasn't an easy win. It felt like it was a really ugly game in the first half, being completely honest here. This game was not a pretty game in the first half, and largely a lot of that was self-inflicted by the Rockets. Now, I will give the Nets some credit here for some of the defense that they were playing. Guys like Royce O'Neal, Spencer Dinwiddie, Trenton Watford. They were aggressive defensively, more than I expected this Nets team to be, and more than I think the Rockets expected them to be just in that first half. So again, the Nets had a halftime lead of 1 point, 50-49, which again, based on how poorly the Nets have been playing and more or less how well the Rockets have been playing, especially at home this season, you wouldn't have expected this game to look like this exactly through two quarters. But the Nets took a halftime lead, 50-49, and a huge part of that was the turnovers for the Rockets. The Rockets had, in the first half, 12 turnovers. Total on the game, the Rockets had 16 turnovers to the tune of 17 Nets points. But I cannot tell you the number of times the Rockets had these mind-bogglingly bad turnovers in the first half that led to easy transition opportunities or just giving up, second chance, not second chance points, but, giving extra possessions to Brooklyn. It's not like first off, Brooklyn didn't shoot the ball better than the Rockets. They didn't, they weren't doing really much of anything better than the Rockets were in this game. As far as the percentages go, as far as the raw counting stats go, they matched them at the free throw line, 4 free throws apiece. The Rockets shot significantly better from downtown, 9 of 18 compared to just 6 of 22 in the first half against the Nets. The difference in this game was literally the turnovers, specifically the live ball turnovers, the turnovers where, again, the difference between live ball and a dead ball turnover, right? If you turn the ball over, if you throw it out of bounds and referees blow the whistle and then the opposing team has to take the ball from out of bounds, turnovers in general are not good, but at least, and I shout out to my guy Ryan Hollins for saying this, like, I forget if it was like last season or a couple seasons ago, but there was a game where the Rockets kept turning the ball over, and he said, look, you'd be better served to just take the ball and kick it into the 5th row, because then at least you get to set your defense, right? Then at least you're playing with a set defense rather than trying to scramble and get back in transition and giving up easy transition opportunities. That's why live ball turnovers are an absolute killer, because you're giving the other team a chance to ignite and start a fast break and get out in transition and score easy buckets. It's exactly what was happening in the first half of this game. The main culprits in the first half, surprisingly, Fred VanVleet, 4 turnovers in the first half of this game. That is incredibly uncharacteristic of Fred VanVleet. Jalen Green had 3 of them, and then a smattering of other turnovers just kind of up and down the Rockets lineup for the total of 12 turnovers in the first half. That was the first thing that they cleaned up. And honestly, past that, it was the main thing that they cleaned up. They went into the third quarter and they had a much stronger third quarter overall. Offensively, Alperen Sengun kind of woke up in that quarter, had a really strong performance, 12 points, 4 of 5 shooting. Got to the free throw line 5 times, hit 4 of them. So Alpi had a strong third quarter, 12 of his 30 points in that frame. And then Jalen Green, his one good quarter of the game, he had 9 points on 3 of 6 shooting. Got to the free throw line, hit 1 of them, hit a couple threes. And in that quarter, the Rockets only had 1 turnover. So they went from 12 first half turnovers to only 1 turnover in the third quarter. And that was kind of the game. And that allowed them, I mean, they had, for all intents and purposes, they had an incredible offensive performance in this game, just minus the turnovers. They were shooting the ball incredibly well. For the game, the Rockets managed to shoot 48.7% from downtown, 19 of 39 on 3-pointers. I can't remember the last time the Rockets had this potent of an outing offensively, shooting the 3 ball. Free throw line, 19 of 27. You'd like to see that number be a little bit better. The missed free throws didn't exactly kill them in this game, but again, that's something that you want to see gradually improve. And again, it was like a smattering of missed free throws up and down the lineup. 1 for 2 for Fred, 1 for 2 for Jalen. Alp missed a couple, and then Ime Thompson really struggled at the free throw line, only 3 of 7 shooting at the charity stripe for him. But the Rockets cleaned up their biggest issue in the first half. They were turning the ball over too much. They took care of the basketball in the third quarter, and they were able to win the game because everywhere else, the game plan worked. And that's what we're going to revisit and discuss here coming up in just one moment is the defensive game plan, how they were able to slow down the Brooklyn Nets, the incredible defensive job that they did kind of up and down the roster against the Nets, including a really fantastic job, I think, on Mikal Bridges and a game plan that worked really well against Dorian Finney-Smith. We've also got to talk about your Locked On Rockets player of the game, Alperen Sengun, yet another 30-piece. He has been on an absolute tear as of late. Ime Thompson and Cam Whitmore continuing to gradually get more and more rotation minutes. There was no Tari Eason in this game, so Cam Whitmore getting the nod and Ime Udoka rewarding him for his very, very solid play, as well as a bit of a clunker from Jalen Green. We're going to get to all of that here in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Around New Year's, we get obsessed with how to change ourselves instead of just expanding on what we're already doing right. Maybe you finally organized one part of your space and you want to tackle another, or maybe you're taking your supplements every morning and now you want to actually eat breakfast to go along with that as well. Therapy helps you find your strengths so you can ditch the extreme resolutions and make changes that really stick. Look, I've done therapy in the past. It can be kind of this really valuable tool in having a therapist kind of walk you through some of the different things that you're trying to accomplish in your life that you need a little bit of extra guidance on. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Celebrate the progress you've already made. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Some exciting news as Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. Subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Your Locked On Rockets player of the game from this one, how could it be anybody other than Alperen Sengun? That's actually not true. I really did sit here and think about whether it should go to Alp or Fred, just because Fred had a really phenomenal game in this one, but the turnovers in the first half, I think, kind of sealed it for me. And Alp, he had a 30-piece. Anyways, Alp's your Locked On Rockets player of the game. Honorable mention, Fred VanVleet. Alp had 30 points. On 11 of 17 shooting. He was 8 of 10 at the foul line. He had 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, 1 block, only 2 turnovers, plus 17 in his 34 minutes of run. And look, this is what Alperen Sengun has basically become on a nightly basis, right? He is a walking 20, 10, and 5, and even more than that now. He's becoming such a force offensively, and the Rockets are continuing to give him the reps offensively to where he's able to average 25, 30. Like he's creeping up there to where I think for a long time, myself, many others have wondered what is the ceiling on Alperen Sengun's usage. Right? Like how much what is his scalability? I think is a good way to put it, right? Because you can see look, you can use Boban Marjanovic for 6 minutes in a game and he can put up 8 points in a row because nobody can guard him because he just shoots over the top. But Boban isn't exactly a guy that you can scale up to 36 minutes a night and build a team around and be like, oh yeah, he's going to average 40. He's not scalable. And I think that was one of the bigger questions, revolving around Sengun. The biggest question was, coming into this year was defensively, what's he going to look like under Ime Udoka? And I think he's answered that question, right? The Rockets are able to be a top-tier defensive team with Alperen Sengun anchoring that team in the middle. He's grown a ton on that end. That question answered. Good. Done. The other question, though, is can he scale up to true superstar production? And I think the dominance that we saw out of him in that Pistons game, that stretch where he touched the ball every single possession down in the third quarter on his way to 20 points and 4 dimes. That's the kind of production where you're like, oh, damn, yeah, he can do this. And he could do this over the course of a game. And he's getting to a point where he kind of he'll kind of coast a little bit in the first half. He'll kind of just, he'll work on, he'll set screens for his teammates. He'll do the dirty work. He'll pass the ball. He'll play make. He'll do a little bit of everything in the first half. And then he kind of settles into the third quarter. He's like, all right, let me try and take over. Let me do my thing. Let me really hone in and focus on scoring the ball. And being able to flip that switch is one of the characteristics of a true star player, a superstar kind of player, right? We used to see James Harden do that all the time, where he would kind of go through a first half of a game and he would focus on facilitating and getting other guys involved and seeing if he could get the team going, because if he can get the team going and if he can get his shooters hot and get other guys going, then maybe he doesn't have to put on his big boy pants and carry the team with the scoring burden. But if he can't get his teammates going, if they're having a rough night, whatever, cool. Third quarter rolls around, James Harden turns the dial up to 11, and he's unguardable. We're seeing Sengun kind of do the same thing a little bit, where he kind of goes through the first couple quarters, he's getting feel for the game, that kind of stuff, and then the third quarter rolls around, he's like, all right, bet. I'm taking this game over. Love what we've seen out of him, right? It's, there's no team in the NBA that can guard this guy when he's playing at this level. The only weakness that is still in his game is that outside shooting. I did like that in this game, even though he was 0 of 2 from 3, it did feel like the couple threes that he took with much more confidence. He has to be willing to pull the trigger on those shots to keep a defense honest. So Alperen Sengun continuing to play at an all-star level, which means
Alperen Sengun is an all-star. I'm just letting everybody here know it. The Wizard is an all-star. You heard it here first.
Shout out to Tari Eason for one of the best drops on the soundboard this season. And I will say there was like a bit of weirdness there in that first quarter. Nick Claxton had 10 rebounds in the first quarter. He finished the game with 13 rebounds. So it's not like Nick Claxton was just like dominating the glass or something. It was just he had a lot of rebounds just kind of bounce his way there in the first quarter. It was kind of weird that he picked up so many rebounds so quickly in the first quarter. I don't want anybody to look at that stat sheet and be like, oh my God, he dominated Sengun on the glass. Not the case whatsoever. I will say, though, one of the things that the Rockets did schematically that they've continued to do this season, which I actually really think is a smart play, is they continue to place Sengun on a wing player rather than having him guard Nick Claxton in this game. So in this game, Sengun was the primary defender on Dorian Finney-Smith, actually, for much of the time that they shared the court together. And now they changed it up at points in the game. So like there was kind of, they opened the game with Sengun on Dorian Finney-Smith. There were stretches where Sengun would guard Claxton. And Ime has talked about wanting to switch up the coverages over the course of a game to keep another team kind of like on their toes, right? That way they can't exactly figure out what you're going to do on any given possession. But I like the creativity in putting Sengun on Dorian Finney-Smith, who came into this game shooting something like, I don't know, like 26, 27% from three over the last like 3 or 4 games. And it worked. It worked really well because you basically challenged Dorian Finney-Smith to be the guy to hit down shots from the perimeter and beat you. And you look at the final box, Dorian Finney-Smith, 1 of 11 from long distance. So that game plan absolutely worked. If you're the Houston Rockets, you look at that and you're very content with how poorly Dorian Finney-Smith shot the ball, only 4 of 16 overall in the evening. And then you also look at their other kind of, bigger weapons, I suppose, in the starting lineup. Dinwiddie, a really quiet game, only 5 attempts. Don't know what was up with Dinwiddie and why he shot the ball so infrequently in this game. Just didn't get up any shot attempts, it felt like, really. Mikal Bridges, 5 of 18 shooting. Cam Johnson, only 6 of 13 shooting. The Rockets collectively did a really good job on the Nets starters. They kind of struggled at times with the bench unit. Daron Sharp having his way a little bit, 11 points, 12 rebounds, kind of getting some easy gimmies inside the paint. Royce O'Neal, 5 of 13, not an efficient night, but he had 13 points off the bench for the Nets. Overall, I think the Rockets did a really solid job defending Brooklyn, forcing them into some really tough shots, closing out hard on shooters. I really enjoyed their defense. It was mainly just the offensive struggles, specifically the turnovers that they had in the first half, which is why the Nets were, able to play such a poor game offensively. They shot under 40% from the floor. They shot under 30% from 3. They shot under 62% from the charity stripe. Like, it was an awful offensive evening from the Nets. They looked like a dumpster fire, but because they were getting all these extra opportunities offensively, you look at the total number of shot attempts. The Nets had 93 attempts to the Rockets' 76 attempts. The other area that I would highlight here is the offensive rebounding department. So Nick Claxton did have 5 offensive rebounds in this game. Daron Sharp had 4. Trendon Watford had 4 as well. So that was another component, aside from just the turnovers, that the Rockets had to clean up over the remaining portion of this game to give them a chance to win. And again, you walk away thinking, overall, the Nets still got those offensive rebounds in the second half. I think it was double check, 10 of their 15 offensive rebounds in the second half. But because their offense was abysmal, it didn't lead to a ton of second chance points. So it wasn't the end of the world for the Rockets, I should say. But overall, an ugly game that the Rockets woke up, took care of business in the third quarter. Jalen Green woke up and had his one good quarter of the game, but he struggled in the other three quarters, which seems about par for the course this season in how we've discussed him. Also want to highlight Ime Thompson and Cam Whitmore, who continue to grow, look better, and are settling into the rotation. Cam Whitmore getting the nod from head coach Ime Udoka. Can't talk. Sorry, I'm all still nasally and gross. Ime Udoka, in the absence of Tari Eason in this game. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. And all you have to do is wager $5. It's that simple. The app is so easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet, like live same game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and so much more. Right now, you can take a look at the outright Super Bowl favorites this season. The San Francisco 49ers at plus 210. Right behind them, the Baltimore Ravens at plus 350. Distant third place favorites, the Dallas Cowboys at plus 850. And rounding at the top five, you have the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills, both at plus 950. If you want to go with a bit more of an aggressive bet, you can go with the Texans at plus 8,500 to win it all this season. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get into the action this NFL postseason. Again, that's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, one guy actually that I completely just blew past the stop sign of in my notes for that second segment is Fred VanVleet, who we got a lot to get to in this finals. We might go a little long today. We'll see. We'll see if I can be quick and concise here in this segment. Fred VanVleet, who I thought had another phenomenal game, 21 points, 6 rebounds, 10 assists, aside from the 4 turnovers in the first half, which he cleaned up and didn't have any turnovers in the second half. Really great game from him, but what I liked the most was his shot profile. Fred attempted 9 shots, 8 of them were from three-point land. I like that for Fred. Now, there's obviously going to be some games where teams run him off the three-point line and he has to, take what the defense gives him, but I would love it if Fred pretty much only attempted threes. He's one of the best three-point shooters on the roster. This Rockets team needs guys they need to shoot more threes in general. They need guys who are good at shooting threes to shoot more threes. And I'm not a fan of when Fred shoots closer to the basket. It's just, he's never been a great finisher in and around the rim. Sometimes he's able to drive it in and draw contact, get to the free throw line, sure, but he also has moments where he drives the ball in and throws up some BS at the rim and it has no chance of going in. So for Fred, I really like his shot profile in this game. And if he can do that on the regular, then this Rocket, that's the perfect offensive role for him, I think, right? He did a great job of facilitating, finding guys, setting guys up, and, it worked, right? It was a phenomenal game from Fred, aside from the 4 turnovers. So really liked what we got out of him. Ime Thompson and Cam Whitmore, who continue to impress, continue to grow, continue to showcase their skills. Each of them had moments where they looked really, really good in this game. And I think the biggest thing, so Ime Thompson, 10 points, 3 of 7 shooting, got to the rim a couple times, hit one of his 3 threes. He airballed one of his threes. Look, the shooting's going to take time for Ime Thompson. He was only 3 of 7 at the free throw line too. The shooting will take time, but I love how much confidence Ime plays with, and I love how much confidence Cam plays with. Like, these guys are rookies, but they play with all the confidence in the world. They play like they belong on the basketball court. They don't look tentative. They don't look skittish. They don't look like they're not trying to step on anybody's toes. Cam Whitmore literally checks into the game and immediately starts letting that thing fly. Like, that's what Cam does. Cam in this game, 11 points on 4 of 7 shooting. He was 3 of 5 from downtown, 2 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals. Both of them just looking like solid rookie players. And that's all you can ask for out of these rookies. And I think one of the most important things from this game was that Ime Udoka trusted the guys who were in there, Cam and Ime, who, again, Cam Whitmore getting the run with no Tari Eason in this game, trusted that lineup in the fourth quarter, the bench guys, to bring this thing, kind of, carry this thing for a little bit longer than he probably would have, some extended minutes, if you will. Normally, Ime brings back in the starters around the 7, 8, maybe 9 minute mark of the fourth quarter to close the game out. He held off until like the 6 minute mark of the fourth quarter. And when he did bring back in the starters, that's like immediately when they went on that flurry where Jae'Sean Tate hit his only shot of the game, 3-pointer. And then, or I apologize, not his only shot of the game, but one of his only 2 shots of the game. So Jae'Sean Tate hits the 3-pointer, then Jabari Smith Jr. hits a 3-pointer, then Fred VanVleet hits a 3-pointer, and they push the lead all the way out to an 18-point game. So it goes from a 9-point game to an 18-point game, and it was basically over at that point. But the trust from Ime Udoka to allow those rookies to A, play tandem minutes together with the bench unit, and B, to be out there in the fourth quarter as they were keeping this game kind of at, arm's length from the Brooklyn Nets with keeping that lead. It was, hovering around a 9 to like 11, 12-point lead as they were going back and forth there in the fourth quarter. That speaks volumes, right? These rookies are proving and showing that they belong on the court. And at some point, Ime Udoka is going to start having to make some hard decisions, because once the team is fully healthy and they've got Dillon Brooks back in the starting lineup and Tari Eason back playing consistent minutes, somebody's going to be the odd man out of this rotation. And I really feel like there's got to be a way to find Cam Whitmore consistent minutes in the rotation. Maybe Aaron Holiday is the guy who bites a bit of a bullet and takes a little bit of a backseat. But I do think there's a way, especially in the regular season, especially when you've got a guy like Fred who could probably benefit from a reduced minutes per game total, whatever, then you've got to find a way to just get, Cam, get him like 5 minutes in the first half of a game, right? And if he's got it going, if he knocks down a couple shots, cool. Let him play in the second half. If he doesn't have it going, then you don't let him play the second half, right? Ride the hot hand. And I think you can get away with doing that over the course of the regular season, right? That's not, having a 10 or maybe an 11-man rotation is harder to do. It is challenging to do. But at the same time, there's guys that deserve to play on this team. And I think Cam Whitmore has showcased enough talent, enough skill, enough ability, and enough consistency in the sporadic minutes that he's gotten that he deserves a crack at the actual rotation. So at least as far as while Dillon Brooks is still out, keep giving Cam Whitmore minutes. Please, for the love of God, keep giving him minutes. That brings us to Jalen Green. And, it's unfortunate because there's times where I love talking about Jalen on this podcast when he plays well. And then there's times when he plays poorly, like in this game. And that's just been kind of the story on this whole season, right? Is Jalen have a couple good games, he looks great. He'll have a couple bad games where he looks bad, borderline unplayable. And it's the vacillating between the two. It's the back and forth that's just incredibly frustrating. And I remarked on this at halftime of the Nets game when the Rockets were trailing a very bad Brooklyn Nets team, because Jalen Green was awful in the first half of that game. He shot 1 of 6 from the floor. He had 3 turnovers. He was playing, defense, to say the least. So, like at what point, and I said he was borderline, and I said he was unplayable. And people immediately pushed back on that. And I was just like, look, if you're not knocking down open shots, if you're turning the ball over, if you're not playing great deep, what are you bringing to the table? And I think if you're being objective about it, he was bad in that first half. He was awful in that first half. I think that's the objective truth. And then he had a great third quarter. He bounced back in a big way in that third quarter. He was awesome in the third quarter. In the third quarter, Jalen Green had 9 points on 3 of 6 shooting, 2 of 4 from downtown, 1 of 2 at the free throw line, and he didn't turn the ball over. He also had 2 rebounds and 2 assists. Best quarter of the game by far. It was also his only good quarter of the game. And at what point do we take the kid gloves off and stop being okay with Jalen having 1, sometimes 2 good quarters, and then the rest of his quarters are just awful or bad or whatever? I've never seen fans who are so eager to defend a subpar 5 of 15 shooting performance. He had 14 points, 5 of 15 shooting. He had 8 rebounds. He had 4 assists. He also had the 4 turnovers, 3 of them in the first half. And here's a thought exercise for you. If Jalen Green wasn't a Houston Rocket, if Jalen Green was playing for another team and you were watching his play, as up and down as he's been, as bad as he's been for so much of this season, for basically the last month almost, would you want him on this Rockets team? Would you be looking at him and saying, yeah, that's a guy that I would want starting for my team? That's a guy that I would want. Or is it the emotional investment and attachment in him being the number 2 overall pick, the first building block of the rebuild, the heir apparent to the shooting guard throne, that was once James Harden's, and then, Rockets fans placed all this pressure on Jalen Green of, oh, well, we had the best two guard of the 2010s. Now we have the best two guard of the 2020s. I don't know what to make of it anymore. It's frustrating. It's disappointing. And I don't know if I'm being too harsh on him at this point. I really don't know, because at the end of the day, I haven't seen enough improvement in the areas that truly matter for him. And I just don't know what his future role is going to be. Like, can he be that off-ball presence? Can he be a guy that's going to knock down shots? And I see people saying, oh my God, Jalen Green can't have a bad game because then people are going to flame him for it. And it's like, I mean, kind of, yeah. Like, when your job is literally you're the shooting guard, it's your job to hit shots, and then you go 5 of 15. Like, yeah, that's a bad game. And yes, he had 8 rebounds in this game. I'll give him credit for that. But I also didn't think he would, like, the rebounding was, sure, he got rebounds, right? He got defensive rebounds that were just relatively uncontested defensive rebounds. It's not like he was fighting and clawing and scrapping and boxing guys out and this, that, and the other thing. Like, it was, for the most part, I don't remember a singular rebound that stands out in my mind where I was like, oh yeah, Jalen really fought for that rebound. I think it was just, he got rebounds. Cool. I see, Rockets fans on social media, whatever, get all upset about this, and they go, oh, you clearly have an agenda against Jalen Green, because why aren't you talking about Jabari Smith Jr.? Well, first off, Jabari had an awful offensive game too. There you go. Everybody can, nobody's immune to the criticism if they have a bad game. Jabari had an awful offensive game. And you know what's even funnier about Jabari's offensive game is I've been clamoring for them to get Jabari more touches. Guess what they did in this game? They got Jabari Smith Jr. multiple touches in the first quarter. They tried to get him going early, and he just didn't have it. So they went away from him, and he hit that 1 3-pointer late. That's fine with me. Like, they tried to get him going. He didn't have it. Cool. Guess what else Jabari Smith Jr. did in this game? He got 12 rebounds. He played great defense. He has size. He was switchable. Like, he plays a completely different position, and his role is completely different from Jalen Green's. Jalen Green's role is as an offensive focal point and at times as a primary ball handler and a guy who's supposed to create for himself and others and all of this. There's a lot more pressure on Jalen Green. There's a lot more that comes with his role than the expectations on Jabari Smith Jr. Also, Jabari is in year 2 of his NBA career. Jalen Green is in year 3. There's a different level of expectations across the board. So when you try to throw a straw man argument in my face, like, oh, well, you're only talking about Jalen Green, why aren't you talking about Jabari Smith Jr.? Jabari was bad in this game. Are you happy now? If a player plays bad, I will talk about it. And Jalen Green has been the player who's played the worst throughout this entire season of any of the other Rockets players. He's been the weakest link of the starting lineup. So when he plays bad, it's going to be highlighted. And at this point, I'm just exhausted talking about it because there's almost no winning. We can't have genuine basketball discussions as Rockets fans anymore, it feels like. And it's unfortunate because, look, at the end of the day, I would love to see Jalen Green succeed. I want to see him succeed. I have a similar level of emotional investment in his success, just as you probably do, right? Number 2 overall pick, first building block of the rebuild, all the points that I highlighted earlier. I just don't know what to make of it at this point, right? At this point, I'm just going to stop getting myself excited when it looks like he's turned a corner, when it looks like he's settled in and, found a new role, a niche, or if he's starting knocking down shots, because at this point, the only consistent thing about Jalen Green's game is that he is inconsistent. That's basically it. That's what we've learned this season. And if it continues to be more or less the same thing, then, the Rockets are going to have some hard decisions that they're going to be faced with. I said it in that podcast a few episodes back, right? How much more time does Jalen Green get? When you've got guys like Thompson and Cam Whitmore, a little bit further down the bench who are continuing to grow and look good and look ready, Cam Whitmore is a bucket. Cam Whitmore isn't afraid to knock down those shots and hit 3-pointers and be that quick scoring punch off the bench. And he looks a lot more confident and sure of himself in that role, at least at times, than Jalen does. So maybe it's just a bigger learning adjustment than I thought it would take for Jalen Green to grasp and to understand what to do and how to, be the best version of himself with this Rockets team. And right now, at the end of the day, I don't even know, am I being unfair in this criticism of Jalen Green? How much more time should he get? Should I, back off a little bit? Am I being too harsh? Is it too much to expect a player, a guy who's supposed to be an automatic bucket, whose scoring is supposed to be the best part of his game, is it unfair to expect that player to knock down wide open shots? Like, I don't know where I'm being unfair with Jalen, because at the end of the day, it's year 3 and he's improved as a defender. Wasn't great this game, but he's improved as a defender overall. He's improved as a playmaker. He's improved at making decisions and reads, for sure. There have been improvements to his game, but there's areas that he hasn't improved in, right? He still doesn't have a tight handle. He still gets poke checked all the time. He still hasn't added much, if anything, to his bag offensively. He doesn't have many moves or counters to get open. It's just that lightning. It's just that, I'm going to go one speed and try to get past you. And then he gets to the rim and he still gets denied at the rim constantly. He got swatted multiple times by Nick Claxton in this game, right there at the rim, just because he goes one speed and he doesn't know how to, absorb contact and then try to finish over the top. Or, he'll get to the paint and he'll do that. He'll pump fake and then turn around and do that little turnaround fadeaway, 3-5 feet away from the basket or whatever. Didn't see that in this game. Didn't see him try to counter the size of Nick Claxton at the rim with any kind of move. So I don't know. It's frustrating. I want to see him succeed, but at the same time, I'm going to stop getting my hopes up at this point, because the way that he has played in his career to this point and the way that he continues to play this season resembles that of basically a sixth man, right? A spark plug guy who he can get hot, and when he's hot, cool, you ride the hot hand, he can win you some games. But that's not the guy that you want eating up 30, 35 minutes of time as an NBA level starter. That's the guy that you plug in off the bench. You give him, anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes in the first half, and if he's got it, if he's on fire, if he knocks down some shots, if he's on a hot streak, cool. You ride the hot hand, and maybe he'll win you a couple games. But the inconsistency is painful, and it didn't kill the Rockets in this game, because the Nets are an awful team and they're playing awful basketball right now. But it could have killed them, and it has killed them in other games this season. So that's kind of where the Rockets are at. And I've got, people who say, oh, well, the Rockets won by double digits. Why are you upset? Because they won by double digits because they played a bad team. What happens when they play the good teams, right? You can't have these kinds of games when you play the good teams. If you want to be a good team, if you want to be a playoff team, if you want to continue building good habits and being, a good playoff caliber basketball team, you have to iron out the weak links in the roster. And right now, Jalen Green is the weakest link on the Rockets roster, at least of the starting lineup. So maybe I'm being too harsh on him. I really don't know at this point. You give me your thoughts. You give me your thoughts on Jalen Green. Give me your thoughts on this game in the YouTube comments. Now, I did promise that I would open up Tankathon for a quick Brooklyn Nets pick watch. And after the Rockets beat them down in the second half, the pick that the Brooklyn Nets owe to the Rockets this year, unprotected, their 2024 first-round draft pick, is currently sitting at number 10. So they're just ahead of the Utah Jazz, just behind the Atlanta Hawks. So it's currently the 10th overall pick, which means if we sim this lottery, let's see where the Rockets land. Let's do, lottery sim. Staying at number 10. Okay, not the end of the world, but that's not bad. And again, the Nets are slowly getting to a point where if they continue to look bad this season, if they continue to bottom out, if that pick starts to float towards the top 5 of the draft, if you're the Rockets, what do? Do you want to hold on to that pick and draft another young talent? Or, first off, Sarr would be incredible if you could get your hands on Sarr. That would be an amazing pairing with Alperen Sengun, or just an amazing kind of, flip with Alp, whatever. I will say, look, it becomes more and more enticing if you're the Brooklyn Nets, the idea of a trade package centered on getting your picks back and trading Mikal Bridges. So maybe there's something there. Maybe that's a discussion that we can revisit in a later episode. Not that Mikal Bridges had a phenomenal, showing here, a job interview, if you will, showcasing his skills in front of the Rockets. But Mikal's been incredible, and he's also being asked to be a number 1 option when that's not what his role is. He's not a number 1 option. He's a really great third option, and he's still one of the best premier 3-and-D wings in the entire NBA, and he's showcased a lot more skills with the Nets. But anyways, I don't want to go too far off the rails here. That's our final segment. Those are final thoughts from this one. Give me your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Let me know your thoughts from this game. Tell me how you felt about Alp's 30-piece, his continued decimation of the NBA on his quest to become an all-star, Jalen Green's continued struggles, and what the Rockets should do with those Nets picks, especially as they keep creeping up the lottery board. But with that, that's going to do it for today's episode. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcast or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.